Miss Amy. First of all, I don't even know how you say your last name.
Priessnitz, but they all say it differently, so I don't really know.
Okay. That's what I was going to guess, but I didn't want to butcher it. Priessnitz. All right. So thank you for talking with me today. I know we meant to get to it a couple times, and I think one of the things that we initially had some relatable experience with was we talked about both our experience at family court. So that's something that I really like to hear about your experience, since I've been dying to hear about it. And also just I've been drawn to your art and all of the different ways that you express yourself, and so I'd love to hear a little bit about that too. But however you want to lead us there, I'd love to hear as much of your story as you feel willing to share today. So with that, I'll let you jump in wherever, and I might interrupt a couple times if I want to ask some questions, but otherwise the floor is yours.
Sounds good. So backstory, like I said before, I come from a Catholic family. I went to St. Mary Springs, and I had a strong faith, a solid upbringing. You know, I don't want to say privileged, but, you know, it was relatively easy. You know, I come from a good line here and, you know, a supportive family. So let's fast forward to high school. I was engaged at 17 years old. Terrible idea.
How big is your family? How big is your...
Very large. So my mom's side has 7 children.
Wow.
And so just kind of expanded from there. And my dad has 6 siblings there. So, and then it's just my sister and I with my mom and my dad. And then I have 2 girls, and my sister just had her little baby boy. So we kept it smaller when my parents were together. But so again, I was engaged at 17. I bought a house at 18.
Wow.
And then things fell apart, right? So our wedding was 5 months away, and things just went south after we moved in. And that was it.
In high school?
What was that? Did
you and your husband meet in high school? Your ex-husband?
Nope, this would be prior. So I was engaged before I met my ex-husband.
Okay.
And so was he. So that's kind of how we started talking, was we were going through the same thing around the same time. So I met Chad 3 months after my engagement was off. And we were together for about a year and a half. It was rocky. And then I became pregnant in May of 2008. So
how old were you then?
21. So, and like I said, we weren't really together when that happened. So that was kind of the start of, oh my gosh, I'm the black sheep now of the family. So that's kind of where it started, right?
I was also 21 when I had my first, and so.
Right. So my family, especially on my mom's side, because they're well known in town, and we always volunteer, and we're big with St. Mary's. And so I think I started losing my faith. Actually, I know I started losing my faith when the church kind of abandoned me. I don't want to say abandoned me, but they just kind of pretended it wasn't there. Right. So I stopped going to church because I was embarrassed. One, because my engagement fell apart. Now I'm pregnant. And I mean, I used to cantor every Sunday. So I just kind of went missing for a little while. And my family wanted me to give my daughter to my aunt and my uncle, because they had been trying for a baby and they were looking at adoption. And they said, if you love this baby, you will give her to your aunt and your uncle. And these are some of the most influential women that you could ever meet. You know, doctors, professors, nurses, these people, I mean, they're strong people on that side. And it kind of took me by surprise that that's kind of the approach that they took. So I stopped going to church, and I would go back to Chad in tears. And he's not a faith-based person. You know, his family's not Catholic. He's not baptized. So he's agnostic. You know, that's what he considers it. But I went through with it, and I had Lena early. She was a month and a half early, so she was a little peanut. And we were not ready to be parents at all. Like we weren't ready.
Very few people.
Yep. So we went back to the apartment, and I remember setting her down thinking, oh my God, I have to keep her alive. And there's no nurses here. And I looked at Chad and I said, you know, we're going to do this. Do we want to stay together? Do we want to I'm with you for 18 years plus now, no matter what. So we worked at it the best we could. And like I said, neither one of us were whole people. We were still broken as individuals. So that's not exactly a strong foundation for any sort of relationship. But we had Lena. So we had to grow up fast.
Yeah.
And we went through the motions. We bought a house the same year that Lena was born. And then the following year, we got married. And I actually proposed to him because my dad said, I'll never forget it. He was wearing a green shirt and he said, these are the cards you've been dealt. Now deal with them. You have to get married. I'm like, okay. All right. And everything he says, I listen no matter what. Like, it's just how it is. And it was actually him that made me think, you keep your daughter. He said, blood is blood. If you don't want her, I'll take her. So that's kind of the approach on that one. So we got married.
And we just a minute.
Got it.
Okay. So I wanted to ask a little bit more clarification on two things. First, kind of how that went down with the church, if you wouldn't mind, whatever details you're willing to give. So was that, you were talking more about the having a child out of wedlock, and that created, did someone talk to you about it, or you made it sound like it was more of a passive casting off of, or can you talk more about that, I guess?
Sure.
Thanks.
So like I said, I didn't necessarily feel abandoned. I was hurt though, because they were not supporting me in the pregnancy, and just because it wasn't traditional. I wasn't married first. I didn't move into the house and then have the baby. It was backwards, completely backwards. And when I would go to church, I remember hiding my belly. You couldn't tell. I mean, through Thanksgiving, I was pregnant in May, through summer, and through Thanksgiving, nobody even knew I was pregnant. And when it started to happen, my mom wanted me to go up in the choir loft and just not go to church, right? I was the black sheep now. And I just immediately appeared as a baby.
That way, or did people talk to you about it, I guess is what I'm trying to get a handle on.
I consider myself an intuitive person, so I could feel it. Okay. And then when I would, when I first, because every time after church, we would go and have breakfast at my grandma's house. And that's when all of my aunts and uncles, and well, just my aunts and my grandma and my mom, they would all come together and talk to me about it, because I knew I wasn't sound mentally, physically. I just wasn't whole. I was not ready. And then I would go back to Chad or my dad, and they'd say, nope, you're going to keep her. I'm like, okay, so I'm getting torn in two different directions. And with the church, Father Vic was there, and he accepted me no matter what. No matter what. I mean, I grew up with him. I was a server. I was a cantor. My parents ushered and distribute. Like, we were just part of the church. And Father Vic was there.
Awesome.
So that was a big one for me. With the baptism of Lena, I had to get Chad on board for that. He's only been in the church like 3 times. Wedding, baptism. That's it. So it was just me and my girls, and everyone would ask, where's your husband? Things like that. And I could just feel the judgment from my own family. And, that was tough. So that's when my faith slowly started to decline as with the Catholic Church itself.
Would you say it was more your faith in God or more your faith in religion? Or both? Religion,
but that goes hand in hand. When you don't practice every week, your faith starts to deteriorate as well. So I stopped. You don't think about it every week. Every time you go to church, they give you a task for the week, right? To better yourself. When you don't go to church, you start to lose that. At least I did at the time. That's all I knew. I didn't know any better. So the baptism was hard. Just because they kind of gave me some grief, because the godfather and godmother, they're supposed to be baptized as well. But his family, they're not Catholic, right? So to bring in his brother kind of raised in a little upheaval there, because he's not baptized, but my sister is. So that was kind of iffy. And then the class that you have to go through before your wedding, he didn't want to be there at all. And they I can't remember what priest was there, but he called Chad out when we were all sitting there amongst some couples, and he got mad. Ooh, was he mad?
What do you
And I'm
mean he called them
kind
out?
of saying that you need to be present here and want to be here because you want to be here for your marriage. And it was really snippy. And Chad's a quiet person. He's an introvert, not like me. He's an introvert. So he's got his energy drink and he sits back in his chair like, I'm ready to leave, like now. And I said, well, my family wants me to get married in the church. We have to do this so that we can have the wedding at St. Mary's. My whole family's been married there. I was baptized there. My mom was baptized. Like, it goes way back.
So that's
he
what
did.
I wanted to kind of get more clarification too then, on who was stressing the adoption and why do you think that, or to give your child up for adoption, and why do you think they were saying that? And then, yeah, talking a little bit about, do you think that just because two people are having a baby together, does that automatically mean that they should be getting married?
Good question. So my mom said, like I said, I think they knew that I wasn't ready between going through the first engagement, having a rocky relationship after, then getting pregnant. I was not a fit parent at the time. I knew that, and neither was Chad. So I think they were looking out for the best interest of everybody, right? And then my aunt and my uncle, they would have a child then to raise. And that's what they were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same breath, Lena saved us both. I firmly believe that because we were both on bad paths at the time. And Lena being born made us grow up. And I firmly believe that she was sent for a reason, right?
Amen.
And she is an intuitive, sweet, caring kid. Like, you just couldn't ask for a sweeter person. So
that point you just made, I just want to emphasize it because I wholeheartedly agree that, so I tie this in to my faith, but I believe that one of the reasons that perhaps God set things up the way he did, and that we come from our parents and that we have children, that becoming a parent and that makes you selfless, or have to be selfless for the first time. And so that's why, like in my work, sometimes I get really, and my experience with the family court, I get very frustrated when the government so quickly thinks that tearing up a family is somehow going to be better for either the children or the parents. Because we learn in counseling that when the family unit is happy and healthy, that all of the individual members of the family unit are happier and healthier, and vice versa. When the family unit is in ruins, then typically the individuals within the family are also in ruins. And so when you take children away from their parents, even if their parents are struggling, it's counterintuitive, but that's actually wrong, in my opinion, that you should keep them together, and even through the problems, let each other see each other going through the problems and build that resiliency and all of that. That's, I guess, I don't know what you think about that, but.
No, I hear you on that. I don't know if I should jump forward to my divorce, because there's some key components in there that play a role. Because when you talk about the family unit, it starts with the parents and the marriage, right? So as that starts to deteriorate, just like you said, the kids' confidence in the parents start to deteriorate as well. And they see it, they feel it. They might not say it though. And that comes out in different ways between, my daughter, my oldest is having a hard time still. And it's been since 2019. So that's when I filed, and it was a long process for us, for different reasons, but I've seen what it did to her. It hurt her so bad, and she holds it in, but I can see it. I can feel it. So I get where you're coming from there. The most stable out of all of us is my 9-year-old. She really is. So Chad had dealt with depression for a long time. And then I'm bipolar 1, and I'm a huge mental health advocate. I really am. So that played a huge role in it, as well, as far as the manic episodes that I had. And actually, I'm going to be doing a podcast with Lena about being raised in a family with bipolar parents or with mental health issues, and how she feels and how she felt like she needed to take care of me.
Awesome.
And so that's going to be interesting. But like I said, it just starts to fall apart, and it takes two to keep that marriage together.
Right.
And once those pillars start to crumble, like I said, everything falls apart. And that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's piece by piece by piece. And with the court system, you know, it's so black and white, but it doesn't, every single divorce and family is different, and they don't take it into consideration. And the mediators, you know, they're like with your story, they're not therapists. They're not. I mean,
Right.
they don't have that. It's such an emotional experience, and it's like to your core, your soul. It hurts for days and years. It hurts for years. And my divorce was not a fight. It was sad. That's the only way I can explain it. It was sad. I wanted what was best for my girls, and the guilt on what I did, because I stepped outside the marriage. Not a lot. It was just enough where, I mean, I haven't forgiven myself on that. He has, my family has said, let's move on. Well, they sort of have. But after that, I said, it'll never be the same. I just ruined everything. Like, that was the last straw. And he, you know, with both of us, there were multiple things that were making it separate. I mean, that goes back to before Heidi. So, and the foundation, actually, I wasn't ready. I didn't want to get married, you know, so I just did what I had to do, I guess. But like I said, it was slowly deteriorating from the start.
How long were you married?
10 years, together for 13.
Okay.
So, and I did the best I could. I convinced myself that it was okay and that we're the perfect family, because we looked perfect. That's how it always goes, right? We had the perfect Thanksgiving cards and the Christmas cards, and we did the best we could. But in reality, it was not okay. Behind closed doors, it was silent. We never fought. We never screamed at each other. I think there were like 2 times that we were really angry. But over, you know, we would just close it off. We wouldn't talk. And I wrote in my journal, and it was bad. I go back and read that, and I just go into tears still, because it was a bad place. It was dark, and I didn't have my faith. And in all transparency, sorry, there's somebody looking in my window. In all transparency, I had started drinking, and that was back in, it was right after Heidi, so 2015, I'd say.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, no, 2013 it was.
Okay.
And I let a friend into my house with her son, who was 2, same age as Heidi, and roughly around the same age. And I started drinking after that, because they were both unemployed. My ex-husband and my friend were unemployed, and I had 4 jobs trying to keep everything afloat.
Wow.
So I would come home and I'm exhausted, and the lawn wasn't done, and the dishes weren't done, and the kids were still flying around. So it was too much. And there were some manic episodes in there, because I was not medicated then. So yeah, and that's where you start falling apart. So, and he just didn't have the oomph to get help when he needed it, and neither did I at the time. So I think that's where it really, really started to fall apart.
Were you both self-medicating then? Is that what I'm hearing? Or?
Yeah, and like I said, I tried everything from yoga and meditation and essential oils, you know, eating right, things like that, and it just didn't work, because it's a chemical imbalance. Physically, it does not go away, and in fact, it gets worse with time. So once I was medicated, things got a lot better as far as stability with work, not having manic episodes. And my kids, you know, they had to endure through all of that. You know, they could tell when I was going into a cycle, right? My oldest, and that would cause anxiety, and they would shut down. So that's what happened in my family. Everything shut down. We didn't talk through it, and the effort was not directed in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first time that the alcohol got me, and I snapped out of it when my daughter came up to me, and she had asked where I was the night before, and I had been out with friends, right? That's where it all starts. And I remember her, she was probably 5, and it just broke me. So after that, cold turkey, did nothing. Like, that was it. I have the strength to do that once I realized that it caught me, right?
What confronted you about it, are you saying?
My daughter, yeah, she confronted me on it, and she asked where I was, and it just broke my heart. She should not see me like that, ever. a child should never see their parent like that, because it shows no self-control. So that was the first time. And the second time is with work. I just buried myself in work because I didn't want to go home. So instead of, I just didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
So the drinking caught up with me again, and that's when I stepped out of my marriage. And Chad actually came into my office, and I was all dressed up, ready to go to a party. And that was so traumatic to me that I don't even like talking about it, but that's what did it. That was where I couldn't do it. And the funny thing is when, not funny at all, but when I got in the truck, because he was going to take me to my parents' house to talk about it.
Stopped at your work to confront you about.
What was that?
So he stopped at your work to confront you? Is that what was
You were
traumatic?
worried where I was. I was supposed to go to this party. I had tickets for the Ret Law. It was a big shindig. I was in like a flapper dress. I was all excited. And my friend was like, she's not here. Because I had been sitting down with a coworker having like straight whiskey because we were talking about our marriages. And that's where it starts.
Gotcha.
When you start complaining about your marriage to somebody else, that's when everything starts to fall apart. I've learned so much from that. So it caught up with me. I didn't realize what time it was. And then he came to work looking for me. My car was there. So they were looking for me they were worried. So like I said, he walked in, everything was just traumatic. It was horrible. It was horrible. But when I got in the truck, he wanted to take me to my parents, and he was almost in tears because he hurt. And I'm like bawling because I don't know what's going on really. And he said, please don't divorce me. He said that to me. Please don't divorce me. And that I'll never forget that, because it's like he knew that he had lost me at that point, because he knew that that was it for me. Once I crossed that line, which will come into, what happens after death and how my faith plays a role in that. It's one of the 10 commandments. It's one of the 10 commandments, right? There's only 10.
Oh, you talking about?
To me, that's adultery. It is adultery in any way. Like it is. It didn't go that far in some people's eyes, but to me, just even talking to somebody like that about my marriage and thinking about stepping outside the line, to me, that's adultery too, because it's in your mind. So that's what happened there. And I just thought it was interesting that he said, please don't divorce me, because he still is attached after 2.5 years now. He still can't move on. And no, I would never wish that upon him at all. But so with the divorce, again, I couldn't forgive myself. I ended up leaving my work. That was a good paying job, things like that. I enjoyed my work, but I just couldn't be there. It was not healthy. So I quit on a whim, actually, just like that. And the next morning I felt so relieved. I'm there with my children in the morning. I could never do that on a Saturday because I was constantly working. And I remember feeling so relieved and enjoying breakfast with my kids. And they were happy to have me there. And that went through the weekend. And then Monday, the oh shit moment came on. I was like, now what am I going to do? All right, what are the 3 things you got? What are you good at? What do you love? What do you love? And what are you known by? Right? Okay. What am I known by? Real estate, people. I'm good with people. And I'm a worker, right? So I'm like, all right, I can get a job at that. That's solid. What do I love? I love my family, right? Love my family. I love horses, art, and dogs, and people. I love people, right? There's that. And what am I good at? Okay, I'm good at work. I know I could run a business because I was running the business when they were all gone. So I was solid there, and I can manage people. I thought about my strengths in the work. And so that's where my art came in, right? I started there. And when I said that there's little signs, there's signs that God sends wholeheartedly. He sends signs if you just learn to listen, right? You really got to hone it in and just kind of be quiet mentally, if that makes sense. And I was cleaning out my stuff downstairs because I knew that we were going to separate. I was cleaning up my boxes and all that kind of stuff. And I came across, actually, where is it? Hold on. Please hold. Hang on.
All right.
Right here. It's a little crooked, but in one of those boxes, it had gone through 2 floods. Can you see that? Those
Yes,
are,
I
it says
see.
Perspective Studios, right? I had those cards made when I was 18, and
Wow.
that was my freelance art that I did, right? So I'm like, all right, I bought this building because I needed a place to go. And I started an art studio because COVID hit, said, who's going to rent that? All right, I got to do something with the lower level. Opened up an art studio. And again, I bought it on March 11th and COVID hit on Friday the 13th, 2020. Great. So I was pivoting, right? I had my business plan, everything was solid, but things just started happening, right? I renovated, I had water damage, I had all this stuff add up. And that's, again, I was like, why is God doing this to me? Why? I know this is where I'm supposed to be. I know it. And the struggle was just, it was bad financially, mentally, physically. I look at those pictures, you know, I just moved from Leroy, moved to my house over on the west side of town. Then I moved here. So I moved in 3 months. I moved twice in 3 months. I have a lot of stuff.
Right.
So, and here I am in the middle of town, scared out of my mind because it's loud, it's scary. There's a ton of people here that I'm not used to, right? And I'm sitting here alone without my children. And it broke me. Once it hits you like that your family's not here anymore. And even my parents, there was no support there. Normally it'd be like, you got this, you're starting a business. They weren't there. And I was alone. And that's scary, that you're with yourself and your mind. And at this point I was still medicated, but it was too much. It was just too much. Divorce, moving, starting a new business during COVID. And I'm not complaining because it made me who I am, honestly. Like I became a totally different person through the struggles. And I think I found my faith again at that point. I had hit the lowest of the low. I mean, I was so scared to sleep here. I slept in the basement because that was the safest place. I felt like that was the safest place because there were people walking past the building, and there's, on a Saturday night, you never know what's going to be there. And there were all those protests going on at the time. So I'm like, someone's going to come through and break my windows. And I was so scared. So then again, the business wasn't producing, so it just started, and then people weren't coming out and about. So I ended up renting out my apartment, right? This is where it gets really dark. This is where it gets really dark, that people don't know. I rented out my apartment, and I went down into the studio and started sleeping in the middle room because Chad wanted me to come home. I said, I can't do it. It took me 13 years to get out the door. So I left. I did not move in with my parents. So I slept in that studio for over a year. And as colorful as that place is, that is the darkest place I've ever been in my life. Like, I don't even like going down there. So, so that's kind of where, again, I'll send you a picture. There's a door that I ended up writing on, right? Every time I'd pray, something would come to me, a motivational thought or something like that. And I remember I was like, what am I really doing here? What is my purpose? And when it comes down to what do you think life is? There was a Pablo Picasso quote that it's on my signature on all my emails. And it's, the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away, right? I said that to myself every day. All right, you have gifts. Why? Right? Well, you need to figure it out, because he gives you those gifts for a reason, right? And my art was a big one, and it was making an impact with people. And that's another thing with life. If you can make an impact, you do it. I never shared that dark part of that time because I didn't want to add any more darkness to people. They seen my posts about, the water damage and the business side of things, but they didn't know that I was getting divorced. Nobody knew I was getting divorced until about 7 months ago. They didn't even realize I was divorced. So I never shared that. They just knew that Chad was never around, so, and again, with the divorce, then when I filed, it was back in 2000. When did we separated? No, we separated. And then in 2020 is when I filed, because it would have been our 10-year anniversary. It was like 7 days after our 10-year anniversary. So that played a role in things. And then after things started to roll with the court system, it got hairy. We couldn't afford lawyers, right? So the pro se option was our only option, or I would have lost my building, he would have lost the house, and I didn't want that. So like I said, I didn't want to fight because it never would have been done. It would have gotten really ugly. The kids would have been hit with that. I think divorce it's hard enough. And I felt like the fighting, we could avoid that just by working through it. I look back now and I wish I would have communicated a little bit more thoroughly, I guess. So the biggest thing is I wanted my girls to stay in their beds, right? They don't belong on Main Street. They do not. So I said, you need to figure out how we can do this where you keep the house. We had just moved. So, I mean, that was hard enough. And he didn't have a job. He was the first one to say, I'll get laid off because that's just what he does. And I mean, they were getting $900 a week. So financially, you know, he was doing okay. Me, I was all over the place. Like to the point where I had to choose between the cat getting food or me. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so it was really bad. And I waited for him to get a job because the bank isn't going to give you a loan to refinance unless you have a job. So I waited and I waited. And my dad actually stepped in to say, hey, you need to get on the boat here because this is just going to fall apart. This isn't going to last forever. And you need to go back to work. Because I couldn't go there. I couldn't help him because he got attached. It would make it worse if I showed up there and tried to help. So mentally he wasn't sound. And neither was I. So the girls, it played a huge role in how they were feeling. And I think that's where Lena started falling apart. And then the homeschooling thing, that was a disaster. Oh my God.
Are you trying homeschooling on top of that?
Props to teachers. I'm not a teacher. Oh, and core math isn't my thing. And I don't know the molecular structure of a poison dart frog. I don't. Neither does Google. So,
yeah,
but
I could never do it, but
I'm like, we're supposed to draw it, and I just started drawing trees. So yeah, that was really hard. We made it through though, and like I said, I kept praying so much. I found my faith because that's all I could hang on to. I had nothing else to hang on to. So, and I had
right there.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's when we have to lean on God is when we're brought to our knees. Sometimes that's when we find our faith. In the good times, sometimes it's easy to forget, but when we're brought down to the most fundamental brokenness, that's usually when we start looking up or looking around.
Yeah, anywhere but down. So that's where I really hung on to whatever faith I had left, because otherwise I wouldn't have made it through. Truth, there's no way. So that was the point. And then things started to turn around after that. I had some friends come in that would help me. They would know when I'm really down, and they started to come in and really help me stand up again. I still had my faith. I started going to another church that wasn't Catholic. It was a non-denominational, and it was a completely different experience when I went in there. People were broken like me, and they wanted to be there, and it was just way more engaging than the Catholic faith, and that's not something that I had ever experienced before. And that part really played a role in my every week, just like I was growing up. Every week I had to go, because it got me up off the floor and gave me something to work for the next week, right? And I was welcome there. That was different.
Do you think, and I could be totally wrong here, do you think that perhaps part of the reason that you maybe had a better experience, because earlier what struck me about one of the things you said, I actually wrote it down, was when you were talking about, I think you said you're an insightful person, and you could just sense that there were eyes on you with your old church. And I've felt that same way at times, but I've had to catch myself, and I'm not saying that so I've definitely experienced a form of like social sanctioning, I guess is the word that I would use for it, where people who used to engage with you, you just notice that they don't anymore. And so for me, that was the thing that I kind of picked up on is things used to be warm and now they weren't so warm. But then the thing that I had to keep looking at myself, and this is something that'll kind of drive you crazy if you obsess about it too much, is I had to look at, is some of this my own, is it like perception versus reality? So is some of it my own just feeling inadequate? And now I'm sort of painting that on everyone else. You know what I mean? Like, so now that you had this better experience in the new church that you went to, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think that any part of that might have been that you were in a more active or receptive place in your faith life? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I think I was more vulnerable because in the Catholic faith, it's so structured and that's all I knew, that I wasn't engaged. It was just, this is what we do. This is what we do. And when I walked in there, I was vulnerable, right? I was broken, but I wanted to be there. That's different than going to church with your family. You're supposed to go there, right? This was different because I wanted to.
I think that's the key, right? The vulnerability and the feeling like you needed it and that you were doing it for yourself, the owning it for yourself. That's powerful.
Yeah, because I was lost. And then I just reverted back to, you need to find your faith because that's all you got left.
Sure.
So I went, and that's really where it started. I was still scared, and it takes a while to get back up where you are, you know, and when you say that you were worried about everyone looking at you, right? 9 times out of 10, they're not. And I tell my daughter that all the time. I said, they are not looking at you, because she's got high anxiety when it comes to groups and people and strangers. I said, they're not looking at you, kiddo. It's 9 times out of 10, they're not. And if they are, it's because you're
doing the same thing that everybody's looking at them.
Right, exactly. So, and there came a point where I felt comfortable in myself to not worry about it anymore. Good. So, and I remember that.
So we had a little bit of a technical difficulty, had to stop and restart. But I think we left off, you were talking about the new church family that you had joined and how you were in a more vulnerable place, and that your heart was maybe just in a more open and receptive place, and you really appreciated the new community that you had there.
So like I said, the congregation, they wanted to be there, and they were so much more engaged in the service, which made me want to be more engaged and participate wholeheartedly and open up and just let it go. Like, just fall to your knees and see what happens, because what else you got? What else do you have? And after that, it really helped me see who I am as a person, right? I knew that I messed up. I know that my marriage was over. I know that my kids were hurting and I'm failing in every single way, right? But there was a reason for it. There's a reason for it. And I wouldn't be who I am right now without it. So to kind of come full circle to what I had talked about right at the beginning, I wouldn't be as strong as I am right now without what I went through 2 years ago and beyond that. So do I regret it? Sort of. I'm still in the process of forgiving myself for doing that. But that's on myself. But I don't regret trying anything else. I don't regret taking the risk. I don't regret, doing what I did through my divorce. A lot of people are like, why did you do that? Because I gave them the house. We did 50-50 custody, shared placement, things like that. All the technical things and all the paperwork, because I was a lawyer, right? On top of being a teacher and a business owner and everything else, he didn't want anything to do with it. So I'm trying to fill out all these papers, and the court commissioner was so mean. She was so mean. And she yelled at me. She's like, you need to educate yourself. I'm like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just trying to get a divorce, an amicable divorce. So I bet you I rewrote those documents 5-6 times. I could be an attorney now. But each time I just wanted it to keep going forward. And it was a roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And my heart couldn't heal. I couldn't heal until it was done, because every document would hurt him, which would hurt my children, which would bring the guilt all back to me. So when I was going through the process with the court systems, it was so difficult and nobody wanted to listen. And they would do it on the whole, well, we have a lot of other cases going on and yours isn't progressing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just trying to get this done. You know, the pro se process is not as easy as they say it is.
No.
And
Did
the
you have
longer it
some
went
time
on.
you were separated from your children?
What was that?
Did you ever have some time where you were separated from your children?
Yes. Yep. Because I chose that though, because Chad was home, unemployed. My parents were helping him, right? My parents were helping him. So I said, and they're in their beds, which was my main focus. They are in their home. That is their home now. And I'm the one that decided to leave. And I gave them the house. I said, you need to figure this out so they don't have to leave. And that was really hard. As a mom, that was hard for me to do that. And I think had he fought me on the placement and things like that, or if I had fought him, they would have seen me as unstable, when in reality, he wasn't exactly together either. So it would look horrible on paper, right? But it was just the state that we were in, and there's nothing we could do about it. And the girls, you know, they had to live through that too. So we're hurting. It's sad and it's broken. And the courts, like I said, had no emotion towards it. They were horrible. And with the girls, they didn't care. They didn't care because they looked at it as, he's not working. That's not fit. She's all over the place, not mentally stable. That's not a good place. I was scared of losing my kids. Both of us were. We're scared of losing them altogether. And my parents and my sister was going to go against me because I was broken. I'll admit it. I was broken. And just, this was not a place for the girls to be. So I did. I separated myself. And there were times in there that I can't even remember because I was that unstable, right? There'd be 2 weeks in there where the girls wouldn't know where I am. I was there, but they didn't know how I was doing. So that hurt them because I didn't know what to do. And that looked horrible with the courts. So it was bad. It was bad. But as things started to come around, my girls, they started coming to the studio. They started helping with my painting classes. They started going to the Ark and doing farmers market, anything to get them to come by me, I would try to do, right? I wanted to be around them so bad. And Chad was willing to do that, you know, just because he saw what the kids were going through. The kids needed to be first.
Doing that.
Yeah.
I want to, if I can, just break it up for a minute here, because I want to make sure that we talk about this, because this has become near and dear to my heart. So what I do right now is I'm a crisis counselor. And so the calls that I get are either from a school counselor or police officers, either at the jail or at the hospital or at someone's house, or from a doctor from the hospital. And they call because someone's either expressed suicidal or homicidal ideation. And so I go there to try and talk to them and assess where they're at for risk. And many times I work with children, but also with adults. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is, more than anything else, family issues, and specifically family court issues, are at the heart of what's causing the little boys and girls that I work with to say that they would rather end their lives than continue on in the situation that they're in, or they start cutting themselves, or doing other types of self-harm or negative ways of coping.
Lena does that yet.
So it's a nightmare. What is going on in our family courts? I had never experienced it with my marriage and divorce. We had, like you were describing, worked together fairly well. I also did not fight for the house that we had bought together. I wanted my children to have some kind of stability through that process. So didn't, usually you would sell off the house and split the assets. And I didn't want any part of that, even though at that point in my life, I was completely broke. And I had been a correctional officer and now all of a sudden had bogus charges that I was having to fight against, was accused of abuse initially, but then had that defended and dismissed in court, which was very a traumatizing experience for me because, first of all, the victim herself said absolutely not was he ever abusive to me, then and later on in life. But also, I've never been in a fight or abusive with anyone ever in my life, and I believe absolutely in solving things with words. So for someone like me to be accused of that was deeply, deeply hurtful and painful. And that's one of the things where for about a decade, I felt eyes on me, and some of it maybe was just my own perception of the situation and maybe not reality, but certainly there was probably some truth to, you know, it's on my public record. And so when you get into the family court system, like I did with my 2-year-old daughter, Hazel, it's a, so you have an attorney that's representing each parent, if you can afford it, which that right there, one of the famous psychologists that I follow refer to family court as the cartel of family court. Like the attorneys will soak up as much time as they can because that's how they get paid. But so then they assign, for the children, they assign what's called a guardian ad litem, right? Yep. And this person is, the idea there is they're supposed to look at everything and decide what is best for the children. But they're not required to have any type of mental health or family structure or human development training whatsoever. The person that was assigned as the guardian ad litem in our case was strictly an attorney. That is it. So trained in in practicing law. So that's basically like the polar opposite of the type of person that you would want to have in that situation. Because now you've got everybody's just trying to fight and win for their team, you know? And if you're representing yourself, you have a little bit better chance to cut through that and try and speak more and like, hey, we're all together here. So I was thankful to represent myself because it gave me a voice that I don't think I would have had, because the other thing is these attorneys all know each other and like hang out, and everything is so structured that it's almost like you're just going through the motions. It's like a drive-through. They do handle however many cases a day, and if you get at the initial hearing, we had about 20 minutes to try and give a synopsis of the whole situation that led us there, which is insane. So they don't even have
I remember that. You got 20 minutes. He didn't know what was going on though. Ours went to 45 minutes. I'm not going to get an invoice, am I?
Well, so I mean, there's no seeking to understand the situation. It's just, boom, we got a rubber stamp and move it along because we got another case coming in. And so, so the very essence of it to begin with is people are trying to win, and so it's division. There's no like healing. And then they just split families up as if it's no big deal. And getting back to my point earlier, I truly believe that families are supposed to work through family issues as family. And dare I say, that's actually what family means. The word family, it's like if no one else is going to look out for you in this world, at least your family should be standing up for you and defending you and supporting you in troubled times. And it's like, what is love? Is love a feeling? Well, I don't really see it that way. Love is commitment and saying, well, even frankly, when I hate your guts, like if your little kid does something to you that's awful, are you going to say, oh, that wasn't loving, and then you're not going to love them anymore? Absolutely not. You're going to see that they're going through something and still growing and developing, and you're committed to them.
Right. I just had that happen with Lena. She did some very, very hurtful things, some of the worst things that anybody has ever done to me. And it was brought to my attention, and I asked her calmly, said, is this really how you feel? And she instantly broke down in tears because she said she was in a bad place at the time. And she was cutting, right? Which is the worst thing as a parent that you can possibly see. And when you see it,
cutting, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
That was super, super hard. But we got her help. And like I said, it was brought to my attention because all these apps, you know, Snapchat and TikTok and all that kind of stuff, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't. So other parents had actually approached me saying, hey, we're worried about Lena. And I had no idea at the time. I knew she was hurting, but I had no idea it was that bad. And Chad didn't either. You know, the girls are by him all the time, but he doesn't see them like I do as the mom. I'm very close to my children that way, as far as being able to feel how they're feeling, I guess. It doesn't take words for me to understand that. I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't pinpoint it. And I did not see it turning into something like that, at least that severe. She's only 13 years old, you know, and there are some of her friends that she's admitted to me because I'll ask her specific questions and I can tell when she's lying. So she won't lie to me because I can call her out on it. I mean, some of these kids are sexually active. They're smoking pot. There's drugs in these houses that I don't want my kid going there. I don't. But that also takes her away from her friends, and that, you know, these are toxic friends that also are going through broken issues. Their families are splitting up. So these kids are all coming together and they're expressing how hurt they are, but they don't know how to help each other. I know 2 of her friends where the parents just split. And then one of them is dating an abusive man. I know, what do I say to that? As the parent, you know, do I call out the parent? Do I call somebody else? Do I talk to the school? I mean, there was some very disturbing things on her phone that my dad, we all went to the school actually, because it was not okay. It was not okay. And I don't think that the support system is there in some schools. You know, as far as being a counselor, you see some pretty dark things, I'm sure. I don't know how you got into that position, but that would be taxing on my mind for sure. But, you know, the way the system is right now, whether it's in school, the Catholic faith, the court systems, it's not supportive like I would think it should be in any way. The emotion's just gone. There's nothing there. At least with the Catholic faith, that's how I felt. The emotion was gone. It was tradition. The school, they're overwhelmed with everything else. They're short-staffed, no emotion. Court systems, never had emotion. At least I don't think.
One of the next podcast that I'm doing is, the topic of it is, it's such a beautiful thing with when we can join together as a family of believers to go and worship somewhere and share our same beliefs and support each other. And that's what it's supposed to be, right? A family of believers. But what unfortunately happens sometimes, and this is what we need to keep on guard against, is sometimes the man-made institution of the government of the church gets in the way of that beautiful thing. And I think not just the Catholic faith, but all religion, that's what people are turned off to when it gets to that point. And I think all religions are guilty of that happening because all religions have sinful people running them, right? And so it's a beautiful thing, and it's like an inevitable thing, because when you come together as this family of families and it grows, you have to have a building and you have to have people and staff there, and then slowly it's like it kind of morphs into and there's also like evangelism, wanting to reach out. I know I experienced a little bit from the old church that I'm coming from, which was Lutheran, that same thing. And I don't, and I'm sure maybe you would feel this way too, I don't necessarily paint all Lutherans or all Catholics that way, but I do see your point in that sometimes that institution that we've made up, that can start to actually keep people cut out of the community rather than building them up and supporting them, you know. And then what you're talking about with family court, the last thing that I wanted to go there, and then I want to get back to your daughter, but they're not even remotely trying to be a family court. The better word would be divorce court, and that's, I know people call it that sometimes, but like,
divorce court is between 2 people. They don't even take into consideration the kids unless the parents are like, yep, nope, you can have them, or they don't care.
I just say it that way because there's no like family mentality in the courtroom. There's no family. They don't understand that word, in my opinion. Family means no one gets left behind, that everybody's working together, even if bad things happen, actually, especially if those things happen. And so the biggest change that I'll probably find myself advocating for now, to be honest, I've even thought about picketing for this, is guardian ad litems, in my opinion, should be mental health professionals, or they need to have a mental health professional on hand, because
for children and adolescents, because
right.
Yes, that needs to be put in place.
I witnessed firsthand this attorney abuse my children, and not like physically, but she's asking them to pick between their mom and their dad.
Right.
And any kid who's put in that position, there's this popular movie called Catch Me If You Can. It's based off of a true story of a guy named Frank Abagnale. Leonardo DiCaprio plays him in this movie, but he actually ran off to a life of crime because he was put in that position as a child to choose between his mom and his dad, and he literally just ran away. And then he tried to get money to keep the family together. FBI ended up finding him, and now he works for them. But I was just like, man, you go, little boy, because he knew that was wrong. He didn't want to even think about that question, because it's an awful question. When you're asking that to a child, you're asking them to cut out half of their heart. Right. And when you start painting one of the parents as like fundamentally broken or bad or beyond learning or healing, you're saying that to the child. And so that child is learning, okay, when things get bad, then we need to stay away from people. So what if something bad happens to me? Is everyone going to need to stay away from me then? And what actually does family mean? And that's been the most disheartening thing about my journey here, is over the last years, I started trying to draw people to my family of believers, only to have the leadership of that family punish me for that, because I wasn't, I guess, perfect, but there's more to it, and I'll save that for another thing. But so now getting to your daughter, is anyone can't help but feel a complete lack of control going through something like that, and feel absolutely depressed and devastated by it, and to the point where it kills your feelings and makes you numb, because the feelings you're feeling are almost like disregarded through the process. And so I work with many children who have self-harm issues going on, and they get so numb that they cut themselves to feel something again.
Right.
And
I did it too back in the day. I did a long time ago, because my parents were the same. They fought every single night. And my dad actually asked me that same question. If you had to choose between your mom and I, which one would it be? I remember him saying that, and we were in the truck. I'll never forget it. But they went through their own trials, they did. But I grew up, behind closed doors, you never know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. They made it through, though. So did Chad's parents. So our parents didn't get divorced. You go through it. You don't divorce. That's just not what we do, right? And finally, my dad said, "This is it." I remember him screaming at me when he found out that I stepped outside the marriage. I remember it. I'm so glad he was all the way on the other side of the kitchen. And Chad was silent. My mom was silent. And that was when Dad said, "It's time to go. I'll help you pack your stuff." That was it. That was it. And I always listen to him. So when you have somebody like that tear you down, so traumatic. It was traumatic for me. No different than when I was pregnant with Lena. But yeah, when a kid gets asked that is horrible. They love both their parents. And when I moved to town here, that hurt Lena so much. And it only got worse from there, because she was around friends that were going through the same thing, and she thought she was trying to help them. When in all reality, it's hurting her even more. So This was literally probably a month ago that I had gotten this information, and he's getting help now, but we didn't even know. These kids they hide it so well now. I can't keep up with the social media and everything else. They hide it so well, and that's where you come in. I don't know how you do that, but unless it's known, they're not getting help. They're not. So, and
Well,
that's,
since you set that up a little bit, can I give my little 2-minute spiel?
yep.
The other thing about cutting is it's when you feel like you're not able to control anything else around you, it's something that people can control. And I think that's part of the attraction to it. But so two things that I find myself talking about a lot with the clients that I work with, to the point where I sound like a broken record to my coworkers, but I've found them useful visualizations is one, to think of ourselves as piggy banks. So if you drop one coin and think of that as a negative deposit, maybe that's a traumatic experience you had in your childhood that you never addressed, or someone says something nasty to you and you're carrying that with you. If you put one of those in your piggy bank, you can still shake it around and you can move on and feel like maybe even the right thing to do is just to keep moving on with that in there. But then you start adding more and more and more, and before you know it, your piggy bank's all filled up. And at that point, it does start to weigh you down. And so then each new negative deposit that tries to get put in there is just like the end of the world, you know? You become so sensitive to anything else new because you're already just drowning in unprocessed negative emotion. And so literally what counseling is we're just like a friend for people where they can kind of dump that out and trust that we're not going to gossip about it because we're bound by confidentiality. And so you get to take one by one a negative memory or negative deposit out and process it, and you get it out from the darkness of your mind, and it dies in the light, you know, it loses that power over you. So first you start just like talking and saying, hey, this happened, and you empty out your piggy bank. And then those negative coping mechanisms that we build up that we think are helping us but are actually hurting us, then you start to learn new ways that are positive ways of coping. And those are like positive deposits in your piggy bank. So rather than having it fill up with bad stuff and weigh you down, you start to fill it up with good habits and good support people and things that are going to not only keep you alive, but like motivate you into becoming the person that you want to become. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is just the simple analogy of the frog in boiling water. So if you put a frog in a pot of water at room temperature, let me start it over. If you have a boiling pot of water and you put the frog in there, it'll jump out right away. But if you put a frog in a room temperature water and you slowly turn the heat up, that frog will stay in there to the point of boiling to death. So a lot of times things become, our piggy bank fills up and we don't even realize it's happening until we're in crisis mode and we're boiling, doing things like cutting ourselves or trying to drown our sorrows with substances, whatever it might be. We kind of find ourselves there without knowing how we actually got there, or maybe even not knowing how bad it is, having denial over our current state. And so a lot of times the people that I work with, I have to point to the cuts on their neck or on their arms, or I have to point to the place that they found themselves in life and kind of just like help them see where they actually are, that they're in that boiling pot of water and that they're dying. So I think those are the biggest things, is people just don't realize how important speech is. We're not indestructible. When bad things happen, we have to process those. When people say something negative to us, we have to process that with someone, because maybe we can carry on through that one thing, but if we never address it, it's going to cause us to feel toxic down the road, you know. So
Agreed.
yeah.
So no, I get that. Mine, I just went numb, and I think that's how Lena is. There's certain things that I can't even remember because my mind couldn't process it. There was so much going on. Your mind can't take all of that in. You know,
Right.
even the good things. Like I can barely remember my wedding day. I can barely remember, you know, Disney World, things like that, because your brain can't handle all of that, whether it's good or bad. But especially the bad, I remember, it's like a photographic memory. Like I can remember what my dad was wearing when he screamed at me across the kitchen, things like that. So that's an interesting perspective on it. But yeah, I think that, you know, everyone they process it different.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you see all different avenues on how, you know, not only kids, but adults try to cope. And going back to faith, if you don't have that, what do you have? I mean, there's counselors, sure, but you still go home and you got to try to, you know, like I'm by myself here, and, you know, every night, no, let me rewind. Every morning I wake up happy. You know why? I don't wake up tired or cranky or anything like that, because the night before I show gratitude. And the last thing I do when I'm falling asleep is you have to be grateful, right? It took me probably 3-4 months to have that habit go into place, right? Now it's every night. And every morning, I do the same thing every morning, and I wake up happy. And I think that one little act or that habit that you can establish makes the change, right? That's where it starts. And the past, I'd say past year, I've turned into this different person now because I made that choice to do it. And I honestly can't remember when that all started, but I'm sure it was just one of those nights where I just felt completely alone, like no friends, no nothing. Well, what are you grateful for? There's a lot of things. You still have your building. You still have a roof over your head. There's people that I see it all the time. There's homeless people all over. You know, so that's where it started. I still have my building somehow. I still have a home. My kids are still here. You know, I haven't really lost anybody. My family was still there, and I think they were waiting for me to come to them, I think. But, you know, once the divorce was finalized, then things just settled down. It did. It was this huge weight off my chest. It was a really bad week because I had medical things going on. Like that week of the divorce being finalized, I made it through. I said, if I can make it through this week with all these horrible things, right? I got this. Yeah. After that, it was just like, you made it. You made it. So, and then everything started to come together after that. You know, my family could start healing, right? And it's taken a long time yet. Elena's still hurting, but I think it was just the timing for her. When you're growing up and you're in that pivotal tweens age, that's going to stick with her forever. And but I want her to understand that it's better this way, that we're happier this way, and we're working on ourselves, and she needs to do the same. And she understands that. She listens. Like through all the mental health stuff that we've gone through, I'm very open with her, and she's mostly been open with me, but I haven't been around. I'm not there every night. I'm not there to help them brush their hair. I'm not there to help them get their clothes out for the next day anymore. Yeah. So, and that's what we're working towards. You know, it takes a while to get out from the hole that you're in, right? And I'm slowly getting there. Everything's, you know, between work, and it's finally starting to have that light at the end of the tunnel. But I pray every day, and that's we got to go in the same direction, keep going forward. And the girls see it now, and I can tell that they know that it's going to come back together. As we're still family, we don't live together. And I think they finally grasped that. We're still a family. We are, because we still support each other the best that we can when we're healing. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely. There are a couple things that I really loved about what you just said were, first of all, yeah, that higher power, believing in something greater. So in those times when things seem absolutely broken and it seems like there's no hope, where do you find your hope? And I know for me, if I didn't have faith that God was, let me say it this way. So I think that creativity is turning your inner turmoil into something beautiful, finding how to turn those dark things into something light and positive. And I think that our Creator is the ultimate creative, and He's able to twist every dark turn that we take into something beautiful that can be not only a silver lining, but can be like turn our weakness into strength, right? And
The path. I look at it as a path.
mhm,
There's a reason why everything has happened the way it has. And I honestly feel like I'm going to be able to contribute my past, like with this podcast. I feel like I can share my story because it might help somebody.
right.
Yours, right?
Mhm,
There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
mhm. Strengths and weaknesses, right?
Right.
Right.
You don't have strength without the weakness.
Right.
You're gonna have, you're not gonna be able to build yourself up when everything's just handed to you. You have to taste dirt a little bit and hit the floor for you to even understand what it feels like.
Mhm.
So, and I think, that's what life is. That's just, well, okay, when you talk about movies, my number one favorite movie is What Dreams May Come. I don't know if you've ever seen
Oh,
that with Robin Williams. I
yes,
love that one.
I do
And
too.
there are a couple of couple quotes in there that I absolutely love that, it's, what was the one with Cuba Gooding Jr.? Where everybody's hell is different. It's not all fire and pain. It's your life gone wrong, right? So that was a dark point, and it's right. My life was going wrong, and that was hell. That was hell. But it made me who I am, and it made me gain perspective on there's still another side of that. You can't have weakness without strength. And on the other side of that is all the good things and everything you love. And it's your soul, right? The very essence of who you are. That is your strength, and you need to take care of that. And you can only do that through faith. You can only do that through faith, really, in my mind.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that movie so much. Just one of the main things is the beautiful imagery that they show of the afterlife is pretty
Pain.
yeah. So the other thing that struck me that you were just talking about was, well, first of all, I do kind of think that that's what this life is all about, is we've been given this beautiful gift of free will and being able to make choices with where we take our lives. And obviously, as newborn babies born into existence, we're not going to know how to do that exactly perfectly right. And so we're given this time of grace to, sometimes we fall and we stumble and we make choices that we aren't exactly proud of, but God allows us to learn from that experience and picks us back up and dusts us off and makes us a new creation when we turn to Him. And the other thing is just not staying so stuck in that sadness and hopelessness, and realizing, okay, this too shall pass. So in the good times, realizing, okay, this too shall pass. There's going to be valleys coming ahead. So being mindful that when things are up, they're not going to stay that way. That's important, I think. But then also when you're in the dark valleys, that this too shall pass. This is temporary. It's just a moment in time. It's a snapshot. It's a chapter of your story, but it isn't the end of the story. And every good story has a character arc in it, right? If it was just everything sunshine and roses all the way, it'd be a boring book that nobody would buy. But if there's some major challenges that have been overcome and obstacles that have been overcome, then that's a very interesting story. So I think your story is incredibly.
It's called What If?
Yeah.
That's what it's called. I'm on like chapter 14. And Plan H. No, I'm probably way beyond that. And there was another quote in there where it's, if Plan A doesn't work, there's 26 letters in the alphabet. Keep going. Just keep going. There's always another letter. And if after that, just start with numbers.
So what are some of the things that you do to express yourself and cope positively? What do you do?
Nice. I have my art, which there's dark days and good days, right? There's colorful and then there's monochrome. Because sometimes I just got to get it out, right? If I don't have someone to talk to other than my dog over here who's chewing on his foot. I'm glad I got a dog, actually, because, again, I sit here alone quite a bit. But I'll do my art or I'll write in my journal. So there's that. And then I like to volunteer. I think that gives you a little bit more perspective on what other people need and how you can contribute and help them too. So I volunteer at the Arc, and that was a huge stepping stone for me too, because I had never taught before as far as the class goes. And that was the foundation of my business, right? I was going to start teaching art classes. And that's where I started. I volunteered there. I'm like, I got to figure out what I'm doing. they were so accepting of me stumbling through that first class, and I haven't left there since. So I'm forever at their service because the people there are just amazing. So that was a big one. I love to express myself with helping others that way too. Just because I can come home and it's kind of a fulfillment thing for me. So now it's turned into more of a gift. I have no problem talking in front of people. I have no problem, expressing myself. Same with this podcast. I'll be a transparent person because a lot of people aren't. And I'm confident enough in myself, and I've become more of a whole person to look beyond any judgment that might come on because they have.
You were talking about how you do public speaking and that you're more comfortable with that. And I thought you made a really good point. And one of the biggest ones that I thought as you were talking was just how so many times when we're put in a role of mentoring, whether we feel like we're ready for it or not, I know for me, just in my short experience in the mental health field, is so often I will be saying something to someone, and as soon as I say it, I'm like, "Ooh, that's something I need to keep for myself too."
Right.
So I learn a lot more by it's what you were saying earlier is you have a gift, and one of the gifts is experience, right? And so how selfish to just keep that for yourself. We're called to give that out and help others. It's like in the Bible, we learn about David slaying the giant, and that's awesome, but we also learn about David slaying his lover's husband, trying to cover up his sin, So it's through sharing the strengths and the weaknesses that we're able to help the next generation or our peers, or that's what community is all about, is none of us are perfect and we're all trying to make the best of it. I think the worst thing that can happen is when people feel like they got to carry that alone, or that they're different or whatever. So yeah, I love how I want to praise you. You've been incredibly open and honest on this, and sharing some hard things that maybe other people would feel like shouldn't be talked about, and like we got to keep that hush hush. And I praise you for seeing that for what it is and saying, no, there is power in vulnerability, right?
I let it go. I let it all go. I remember that feeling of just saying, this is what it is. You can't change it. I'm still working with the guilt with my marriage and what happened there, but that's on me. That's pretty much the last step. But when you look back on some of the most influential people and the motivational speakers and things like that, they've all hit the ground, every single one of them, because you can't share that negativity or the experience or the weaknesses without going through it. So how can you help somebody that's hit the ground when you don't even know what it feels like?
Well, I'm not even sure that you would care to, because you just wouldn't even be able to see that way, This is perhaps, this just came into my head, but one of the things that struck me recently when I was reading in Genesis is after the fall into sin, it says that Adam and Eve's eyes were opened, and they were opened to the fact that they were aware of evil in the world. But so to this point that we were just making is I think sometimes it takes one to know one. Like for me now, one of the new roles that I'm really excited about is I get to be a substance abuse counselor and working in an AODA treatment facility. And I know that one of the reasons my supervisor thought that would be a good idea for me to be a part of it is because I have experience in recovery myself. And so I'll know where those people are coming from. And so that's kind of speaking to your point is the people who know where you're coming from, or where they're coming from, how beautiful it is to come together and support each other and lift each other up.
Right. Mental health all the way. I always will be. I don't hide the fact that I'm bipolar. I don't, because I think a lot of people don't want to seek out help. And if they were, I wonder where I would be had I looked for that help and got medicated early on. I wonder where I would be, because I wouldn't have. Any given day, you can destroy your life, right? That's how it is when you're bipolar. It's one thing that can set you off. And I've become more self-aware with things like that because I can now, but overall, like I had to have the self-discipline and the reality checks. And like I said, the awareness on things that could trigger me. And I needed to remove myself from that, whether it's people that were in my life that I needed to let go, right? A job that's physically harming me. Like, just my heart was doing weird things and it's ruining my mentality. Everything was just crumbling. So I needed to remove those things, and that comes with its own judgment, right? When, you know, these higher end people or these successful people that you think are great and they're not, you know, and you walk away from things like that, it makes you look like a weak person, but it's not. It's not. And at the end of the day, you know, you need to just accept yourself and be okay with it, no matter what anybody else thinks. And it took me a long time, but once you get that, it's so liberating. And I wish more people could feel that way. That's why I'm so fine with, I'll express whatever I have. Like I'll share whatever, and they can take it for what it's worth. Take whatever pieces you want, but I'm okay with it.
Being honest and truthful and vulnerable, it's beautiful for all the reasons you described, but it's also painful because it burns off your edges. Like, it burns off the parts of you that you don't like sharing that weakness, and so it makes you strive to be better. So I mean, I know that's what it does for me, is if I share something that I've faltered, I don't exactly like sharing that. I'm going to do it so that hopefully I don't falter again, but also because it's going to help me heal by talking about it.
Right.
But so it's sort of burning off my frayed edges, the parts of me that could be better, but also it burns off the edges of people who aren't actually your friend. There are some people who, you know, white picket fence, they want to give the impression that everything's okay, and as long as you match that, then you're beneficial to them. But if you break that and you're not the white picket fence and you start to show your flaws, some people just don't know how to. Honestly, what I think is part of it is people, I think everybody wants to be that way.
Right. It's a goal.
But they're terrified of it because
Right.
they know
It's a
what this
standard.
world is actually like. There is some truth to the fact that if you are that way, you're going to go through a painful process because there are people. And so I think it's coming from an insecure place of like, I want to be that vulnerable, and I want to be that open and fully known and in the light, but I know the cost, or I have this idea of what the cost will be. And really the cost is cutting out the people, like you said, who don't see that as the beautiful thing that it is, like that's what we're supposed to do. And instead, so then what's the other alternative option to sharing your feelings openly and making yourself vulnerable and trusting that that's the process for redemption, so to speak, to make yourself better? What's the alternative to that? Stay quiet, wither up and die, basically.
Right.
Because the thing you said before, you asked, where would I be if I didn't make myself vulnerable and start talking about that? Well, I'll tell you where you'd be. Because I've seen, this is something that I've learned, is typically people start out depressed. They're weighed down, like I said, with their filled up piggy bank, and they haven't processed that stuff. It starts out depressed, and then people will have moments where they kind of break free from that. And so you could say there's moments of mania or higher elevated because they feel some freedom there, but then there's like, you're kind of caught in between, you know, and you go back.
Yeah.
Often the next step, if people don't address those things, is they develop psychotic symptoms, hallucinations of some kind, or perhaps even schizophrenia. So like there is a progression of mental illness. But the beautiful thing that I wanted to say for you and for everybody else who's listening, who is experiencing some of the same things and or other symptoms, is when you do take that brave step, and it is a brave step, it's a strength, not a weakness, to seek out help and lean on supports of people around you, then you stop that from progressing further, and actually you can make progress towards that. So I've lost you. Where'd you go?
I don't know. Just got weird. Hang on, please hold. Where did it go? Oh man, I have no idea where it just went. Hang on. Better? Oh, there we go. There we go.
There you go.
I'm back.
Next time you can just tell me to shut up. You don't have to.
Oh no! I was like, "What's it going over here?" No, my battery thing came up. But
so I was just saying, the part is that you can actually move the pendulum the other way, and your brain is beautiful and can heal from those things. And so, yeah.
Nope. And that, the mania, it fueled a lot of different things, good and bad, because I never actually had the depression side. So communicating with Chad was a lot harder. I didn't understand it. My mania, the first time I ever had that depression was when I was down in that basement wondering, how did I end up here? You know, that's literally the lowest point of my life. But I was always manic. So for me to try to relate to somebody that has depression, which a lot of people do, most people, everyone will at some point experience that in their life. That's a fact. But it was hard for me to relate to him. So I think that also plays a role in a marriage, and expressing, you know, trying to help people that are on the ground too. It's a little bit harder for me because I'm all like, you got this, right? Because I wake up chipper every day, which I think drives a lot of people nuts. I'll go down to Connie's Diner at 6 a.m. I'll walk in with all the little old men. I'm like, hi guys, it's me. So, you know, and my dad is the same way. You know, he's a chipper guy. But in the same breath, I think that the world needs a little bit more of that. You know, just bring it in. You know, if they don't like it, that's all right. I'm a happy person, so bring it in. And I try to keep it that way. I get mad, like my little post today about, you know, all the garbage and stuff out front of my building and those scooters flying through town. I mean, somebody barfed on my building, on it. And I was like, so there are angry days in there, but I'll always advocate for people with mental health. I think people need to realize it and accept it and understand it. So that's kind of another purpose of mine, is to, if I can have an impact that way, I will. I'll do whatever I can to help people that have hit that rock bottom and don't know which way to go, which I think is kind of what you're doing too. And it's a gift. I think it's a gift. We need to be careful though. We know when we're helping people, I've learned to kind of have a guard up, help, but I can't bring it home and absorb it as much. So with expressing myself, I'll write in my journal, I'll get it out, just like you said, just get it out. Otherwise it'll consume you. And I try to surround myself with people that are like-minded, and kind of have that same vision, I guess. And, you know, with the marriages too, in the future, I want to surround myself with people that are healthy. They don't talk bad about their spouse, things like that. Go around people that have healthy relationships, and, you know, kind of see, I don't know what that is. You know what I mean? I want my girls to see a healthy relationship. You know, they see my parents now as a healthy relationship, but then they're wondering why mine fell apart. You know, so when they are older, I want my girls to know what a healthy relationship is, because right now they don't. And that's sad. They see it as everything is going to be broken. That not to like go dark again, but I think that. Right.
Well, so one of the things that that I learned about in my couples and family counseling classes, there's this place, I don't remember, it's near here, it's within an hour, but they actually, it's for marriage counseling or couples counseling, and they actually have mentor couples. So in the same way that, like, if you're in addiction and you have a sponsor, so someone that's gone before, that kind of knows the ropes of how to do things and to do it the right way, it's someone you can lean on and model yourself after. So they've done this with marriage counseling too, and I think that's so awesome. So they'll have a couple, a man and a woman, come in, and the husband will work with the other husband and the wife will work with the other wife, and so they'll basically be someone that they can model after. And that's so important for the people like you're just talking about, is so many people just haven't had that modeled for them for whatever reason. You know, I have this theory that perhaps one of the reasons that God gave us marriage in this life is to show how hard it is to stay committed. When you have two imperfect people just trying to do their best from their imperfect pasts, and it's not like we're given an instruction book of how to do everything exactly, you know, and so we're trying to figure it out. And and it's hard to stay committed, and you know, Christ calls the church his bride and says that he's committed to us through thick and thin. And you know, I myself have been through technically 2 marriages. The second one we did not file with the state before it was official, before she checked out, but we had gotten married in a church. So I'm certainly no poster child for how to do that right. I don't think I'm at the point where I don't know that I could get married again. I think I'm good with where I'm at, and just trying to make the most of what I have going on now for myself and being successful myself. And one thing to that point is I feel like if you're going to have a successful marriage, it has to be 2 people that are independent of each other, that don't need to lean on the other one. Like, they're kind of okay, self-sufficient, but then they want to become that one flesh, that one pairing, and they see each other as themselves. And I think a lot of people get into trouble when they don't even love themselves, when they're still working through stuff that they haven't processed. And if you don't love yourself, how can you love someone else as yourself? You're looking at that person and you're projecting all of your insecurities and all the things you haven't addressed, rather than lifting them up as if they were you, which is really how it's supposed to be, you know. So I learned that lesson. The other lesson, and this is something that struck me when you were talking, is in my first marriage, we thought we were doing a good thing by putting the kids first. So we didn't want them to ever have babysitters. So I would work first shift, she would work at night, and we were like ships passing in the night, and we didn't make.
High five your neck. It's like a relay race is what I called it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, and it was exactly wrong. Because if mom and dad aren't good, like you said, the whole thing crumbles. You have to have mom. Right. So mom and dad should be number one, and that seems counterintuitive because they're cute little kids and you just want to do everything you can for them. But if you aren't focusing on mom and dad and making those date nights every month or every week or whatever you got to do.
Two plan. I've gone through so much marriage counseling. It's unreal. I know all about that because I tore it all apart for years, actually. I'm like, what is going wrong here? And why is it going in the wrong direction? But it takes 2. You know, when one doesn't see it or feel it, and the other one's like, we need to save it, right? It doesn't work. Right. So that's kind of happened. And it was too late when he decided to engage in some of those meetings. And that's just the way it is. But I think he learned a lot through it. I've learned a lot through it. We both became stronger people through it. So it's not, I don't regret it. I don't. I think, you know, down the road, if we're supposed to be together, it's going to happen. If not, that's okay. So it's just the way it is. And I don't regret it. I don't.
Well, and like you said, you can carry that with grace and show your children love and resiliency in that situation as well, and be the best co-parents that you can be.
Right.
And show them that even if things are not exactly ideal the way we wanted them to be necessarily, that that doesn't mean that we can't be creative and still do this in a loving and God-pleasing way, despite that brokenness.
It's hard, but you know, you have to strive for that. I think everyone should. If they're co-parenting, I think that should be the goal every time.
Yeah.
That's a tough one for people to swallow, because there can be some, you know, some resentment there yet. But like I said, my divorce was sad. We were not mad. We were sad. There's a difference there. And the courts just, it took so long to get through that it took more of a toll because of the time. Once it was done, then we could start healing. And it took so long. I mean, I look at the pictures from when, you know, when I was writing all that paperwork up, I looked like a skeleton. I lost, 15 pounds? And I looked like a skeleton. And now I'm like, okay, now I'm healthy. You know, my dad used to say, he's like, I was talking to you and it was going right through you and you were looking right through me. You were gone. Wow. I was gone. And I heard that from multiple people. I had lost who I was completely. And they said, I don't think I had like a mental breakdown of any kind. I think I just lost myself completely. And I don't know if that's a definition of it, but that's when I hit the floor and that's when my faith came back. That's just, I mean, that says a lot when you're that low and then you come back, and as soon as you find your faith again, then things slowly start to go in the right direction. And that's what happened. It really did. I got my apartment back. I got my girls back because we actually had a safe place to be. We're up here and it's a nice apartment. They don't stay overnight because I choose to keep them in their beds. I choose that. But I see my girls almost every day. We'll go to my parents, or we'll go for the walk, or we'll come out here and we'll go to the library, things like that. You just have to engage in it and commit to your children. I think just show that time, make that a priority, work on yourself, then support your children. I think that should be number one. I really do. And then I'm trying to help them heal too.
Maybe that's a good place to wrap it up, is talking about, so you mentioned that you were more sad than, you said mad, but like spiteful. You didn't have to suffer through you two being spiteful towards each other. And I think that's such a blessing that that's the way it went for you. And I'm so happy that that's the way it went for you, because I've experienced that initially after my first marriage, where we were able to work it out and be pretty awesome co-parents together. But I have unfortunately experienced the other with both of the mothers of my children, where unfortunately some of those feelings are raw and there's hurt there. And what can happen is, rather than processing those so that you can come to a healthier place, the children get caught in this kind of like war or fight over the narrative. And that's where I'm at right now, and it's pretty frustrating. It's like, okay, we didn't work out. Some things happened and we disagreed, and but we have children together, and they need both of us. But sometimes I think some people, and thankfully you and your kid's dad are not this way, but some people can get into this game where they try and like just cut that person out and replace them, so that they just don't have to process the pain that they have, that they're kind of running away from. And what's sad is that approach not only doesn't heal you from those feelings, but now when you think you're protecting the kids or whatever that is, you're actually hurting them, and you're putting that on them and making it so that their life is going to be harder. And the other thing that I just kind of want to emphasize is, and I'm so thankful that you two see this, is, well, first of all, because you're communicating and getting along, you're able to give up certain things. Like you mentioned, they sleep over there, and you're comfortable doing that because
but I do it for them.
You do it for them. But I don't know if you'd be as willing to do it if you weren't ever seeing them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And for me, in the situation that I'm at, is I'm having to claw for any amount of time that I have, because they're just not, their moms just aren't there to work together. And so that makes
all you can do is hug them. That's all when I drop them off, all I could do is hug them, because it does hurt. As a mother, it's so hard for me to do that right now. But when I have a house, I'm almost there, right? Then they can stay by me. And that's my goal. Within the next year, I'm going to have that safe place for them just the same. And I'll make that their home as well. But I would never keep my kids from my ex-husband, ever, because he's a great dad. I'll never take that from him, ever. So I know that they're safe.
They have a piece of his heart in their heart, right? And it's good that you recognize that. And he has something to offer them that perhaps you don't. And it's good that he is able to recognize that you have something to offer them that perhaps he can't. And that's the beauty of having a mom and a dad in your life. It keeps that balance, So that's beautiful.
I'm sorry that it's so difficult for you, because you seem like a great father, and that's all you want is your children. So I'm sorry that is going on with you.
Thank you. It's taught me an important lesson. And the lesson that I'm thankful to be taking from it is we're all kind of dropped into this life, and we all have to try and find the truth and make sense of things. And so my children have been forced in a position to try, they have to figure out what's true and what's false. And thankfully, as you know, as their father, I see through that and I love them no matter what, even if they say things that are hurtful to me, or if I have to try and navigate around some of the deceptions. I guess it gives me hope seeing people like you who've been through it. And I've had other friends that have told me that even if you lose some time, the beautiful thing about the relationship with your kids is that can all come back in just a moment, and in just spending some time together, all of those perceived burned bridges can be mended again.
Yeah.
And so
Someday they'll know. My girls will know someday, you know, why I did it the way I did.
right,
Because right now they're too young to understand it. But at some point, I never left. I didn't, but I needed to do what was best for them. And being around me at that time would have been bad. And it hurt us both very much, all of us. It hurt a lot of people. But now that it's come back around, just like you said, it can all come back. And that's what's happening now, thank God, because I needed them back. I mean, I'm a mother. I needed my children. I need my children. We all do.
Mhm.
So that's one of my purposes here. There's a reason why I'm still here, and Lena's here, you know, and my youngest is Heidi, and she was planned, so that's different. But like I said, she is just, they're so different. But Heidi was one that she's such a just solid kid, like mentally, she really is. So I think she helped all three of us, Lena, Chad, and myself, realize that it's going to be okay, guys. And she'll sit there and she's like, let's make a cake. Like, she's just simple. So, I mean, she played her role as well. It is what it is. But I think that's a good podcast. Very long though. Sorry.
Yeah, well, it got extended a little bit by our hiccups there, so I apologize for the technical difficulties. I'll have to look into that. But thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared and being so open and honest and vulnerable. I learned a lot about you, but just from your strengths and your weaknesses. So thanks for sharing that. And thank you for the kind words of encouragement. I appreciate that. I'm taking all the lessons that I can learn, but it is not easy. And unfortunately, I'm still stuck in that place. So I'm very thankful that I get to do the work that I get to do, because that's kind of where I'm focusing my energy right now. So this is
a hard position. You have a hard position, because that would break my heart. I'd want to be like, you can come by me. We can hang out anytime you want. You know, because that would be
the hardest part right now is just when I work with children, there will be many times where I'm talking to one of them that something reminds me of my children, and I've been separated from mine for so long that's the part that's, I go home and you shed some tears, but I'm able to talk about it with my coworkers, and I see a counselor just to process things that are, you know, thrown on me, to empty out my piggy bank. And that's part of what this podcast is too. And so I thank you for that as well, is just letting me relate and share with you and building community, because that's why I wanted to have the conversation with you. Is going through family court broke me, truly broke me. I was in a pretty solid place in life coming out of graduating from my undergrad at Marion, and then
Congrats, by the way. Good work.
Well, thanks. But I found myself in this hell of family court, and just seeing how awful it is. The thing that I'm also thankful for is it helps me understand where so many of my clients are coming from, because unfortunately, most of them have been broken by our family courts too. So I guess the biggest message that I'm trying to proclaim from the hills right now is we need to reform our family court if we give a damn about our children and our families and our society, our church families, anything. We need to do something, because having a bunch of attorneys fighting over each other, trying to win for their client, and not seeking to understand anything, but just treating it like this McDonald's drive-through of,
right.
You know, I would have had more rights if I was arrested than I did in family court. I mean, it's so far gone from what it should be. That
I'd be interested, being in the field that you're in, I would be interested to see the statistics on, because divorce is so, I mean, a lot of people get divorced now, more than 50% now, you know, and take the children from 15 years ago of parents that got divorced, see where they are now, and then take the children that are going through what we are right now, see what happens in 10 years and where they are, and how, you know, the suicide rate or the mental health of these children, you wonder where it's going to be. You know, and there's other things that play a role in that. You know, you got COVID and everything else. But when you specifically sit down and look at the stats of children of divorced families, I'd be super interested to see how these children come out long term. That'd be an
Well,
interesting.
it's a snowball effect too, right? Is if you're a child of divorce and you have that modeled for you, it's going to be that much easier or harder for you to stay in something if you haven't had. It's like what we were talking about before of seeing a healthy relationship modeled for you. You know,
Yeah.
If you don't have that, I'm not saying it's impossible. It's certainly not. It's very possible, but it comes from talking about it. If we don't talk about it, then it's hard for children to see anything different. So yeah, wonderful point. Yeah. Anyway,
Right.
we can wrap it up there. We'll have to do this again.
We could keep going on this stuff because it's a passion of ours, I think. So,
Yeah.
all right. Till next time. I think that was a good chat. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.